God does not need your resources. Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Whole Truth, where I am taking you through the entire Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation, and we are not skipping anything. So if that sounds good to you, reach down, hit the little subscribe button below. Don't forget, if you want to support the channel, you can go over to thewholetruthbiblestudy.com or just straight over to patreon.com/thewholetruth. And there you will find the study notes. If you're a supporter, a monthly supporter on Patreon, then you can have all those study notes as these videos come out. I make those available over there. I am, after the fact, trying to make those study notes available to everyone. I want everyone to have access to them, but also, it's good to have a little support for the channel, a little support for what I'm doing here. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into making all of this a reality, where I'm trying to make a video online commentary for every chapter of the Bible, so that you can, as you read through and you go, what does that mean? What's that all about? Then you can have the answers to your questions. I really believe God's word has the answers to our lives. That is way too long of an intro. Let's talk about 1 Samuel chapter 14. That's where we are today, is 1 Samuel chapter 14. You'll remember from the last chapter that Saul had Saul had messed up. He had made the sacrifice when he was supposed to wait for the prophet. When the prophet Samuel showed up, they're getting ready to go into battle. So Saul was nervous about that. I think rightfully so. But then he did the wrong thing, and he made the sacrifice, took the role of I almost said the police. He took the role of the police, and he arrested somebody. No, that's not what he did. That's funny, though. He took the role of the priest, and he made the sacrifice. Well, remember that Samuel said, because you've done this, God's going to take the kingdom from you. He's not going to establish your kingdom. He's going to give it to somebody else. That references to David. The Lord's going to give the kingdom to David. But we're still in the middle of a battle. And that chapter ended with, remember that there was no swords, no weapons in Israel. So you have all these people, the Philistines are getting ready to come into battle against Israel. They've lined up against Israel. Israel has gone into hiding. They're hiding in caves and in bushes and in thickets, and they're hiding from the Philistines. And that's where the story picks up. And I want to start out by reading the first 10 verses. Let's read the first 10 verses of chapter 14. We can't do the whole chapter 14 on today's video just because I think it'll probably be too long. Let's start out with the first 10 verses, though. I think I'm going to do 23 verses. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do 23 verses for this video. But let's start out with the first 10. 1 Samuel chapter 14, and let's start in verse 1. And now it happened one day that Jonathan, the son of Saul, said to the young man who bore his armor, "Come, let us go to the Philistine garrison that is on the other side." But he did not tell his father. And Saul was sitting in the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree, which is in Migron. And the people who were with him were about 600 men. Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh, was wearing an ephod. But the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. Between the passes by which Jonathan sought to go over to the Philistine garrison was a sharp rock on one side and a sharp rock on the other side. And the name of one was Bozez, and the name of the other Senah. The front of one faced northward, opposite of Michmash, and the other southward, opposite Gibeah. And then Jonathan said to the young man who bore his armor, "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised, and it may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing restrains the Lord from saving by many or by few." And so his armor bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your heart. Go then, here I am with you, according to your heart." And then Jonathan said, "Very well, let us cross over to these men, that we will show ourselves to them. If they say to us, 'Wait until we come to you,' then we will stand still in our place and not go up to them. But if they say thus, 'Come up to us,' then we will go up to them, for the Lord has delivered them into our hand, and this will be a sign to us." Well, you could hear my phone vibrating on the desk. Let me put that away. Goodness gracious, what an interruption. Anyways, so there you have it. There's the first 10 verses. And the thing I want to show you to start with is what really started this whole thing. So Jonathan, remember, kind of started the battle to begin with by going out and attacking And that's what caused the Philistines to come and line up in array against them. Now, I'm not saying that as a negative against Jonathan. I think he did the right thing. He did what he should have done, which is what Saul should have been doing all along. And Saul is new to this kingship thing. Like he's fresh into this. So I'm not faulting Saul in that way. I don't like to sit here and kind of pinpoint as if someone's doing something wrong when I'm not in their shoes. But I'm saying that Jonathan is doing the thing that needed to be done, which was to drive the Philistines out of the land. This is Israelite land, not the Philistines' land. And so he's going to drive the Philistines out. And so he's already attacked one. Now they've lined up. Everybody in Israel's ran off in hiding. They don't have any weaponry because they've not been allowed. They've been oppressed by the Philistines. Jonathan says on a certain day while everybody's hiding, he says, you know what? Let's go take care of this. Let's go out and let's go show ourselves to them. And here's what we're going to do. He says to his armor bearer, he says, let's go out and show ourselves to them. And let's get something going here. Let's get something moving. That's what he's wanting to do. And I love what he says in verse 6. He gets to that line and he says, nothing restrains the Lord. He's looking at his armor bearer. It's Jonathan and one other guy, the guy that carries his armor and his swords, and Jonathan. And Jonathan says to his armor bearer, he says, let's go out. Let's go out and start something, because here's the deal. Nothing restrains God from saving by many or by few. Let that line sink in for a moment. Nothing restrains the Lord to save by many or by few. God doesn't need a big army. He can use a big army if he wants to use a big army. He can part the Red Sea if he wants to part the Red Sea. Jonathan is demonstrating a dependence. He's recognizing a dependence on God, that he is saying, if this is going to happen, God can do it with or without an army, with or without weapons, with or without resources. Here's a good one: with or without me. That's what he's saying. God can do whatever it is that God needs to do, and he doesn't need my resources to help me get there. God, it's not like God saying, well, I'll help you get there. Jonathan's saying, I want to know if God wants this, God will make it happen regardless of who's with us or who's not with us. Now, this leads me to a question, and it's a tough one. Are there things in your life that you feel God calling you to do, or even that you know that you should do, but that you're waiting for a better opportunity? How often do we wait to do what God's called us to do? How often do we not do what God's calling us to do or telling us to do or revealed to us that we should do because we're waiting for something better, because we're waiting for a better circumstance until we have some resource? We tell ourselves, well, once I have this, then I'll do that. Well, once we have this thing, then we'll do the next thing. Let me just tell you that I'm speaking from experience when I say this. I can go from the ground up. I could talk personal life. I could talk about my business life, opening and running a business, and then all the way through opening the church and operating the church and seeing through as the church would grow. I'll tell you, one quick story. I remember this time when we were gifted a building at our church. So we had this warehouse. We're in this old warehouse. They used to make horseshoes there. A church had used it for a few years, but they had closed and been closed for several years since. And we had opened in this warehouse. We were a tiny church, 25 people, 30 people, under 30 for sure, in our church. And we had an opportunity. Another church called and offered us their old building. And they said, you can have it. You can have our old building. And I'm shortening all of that just to say it in that way. Like they said, you can have our old building. There's lots of other parts of that story. If you're local and you're like, wait a minute, what about? There's lots of other parts to that. I'm just trying to get to the point that we were gifted this building. And I remember this guy, he was so upset at the idea that we were going to move out to that building. And he came to me and he said, Justin, you don't understand. The utilities alone will eat us alive. That's a huge building. And it did feel huge to us. Our church at the time was 2,500 square feet. So that's about the size of a, moderately sized home in America, 2,500 square feet. We were moving into a church building that was 10,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet upstairs and 5,000 square feet downstairs was this church, the church that we were moving into, or nearly 10,000. It might have been like 9,000 and some change, but nearly 10,000 square feet in this church building that we were moving into. And they were giving it to us though. So no rent. So every month we'd been paying for this 2,500 square feet. We'd been paying like $1,500 a month, I think is what it was. Maybe $1,400 a month for rent is what we were paying. We were moving into a building that had no rent. We just had to pay for insurance and then pay for the utilities. He said, you don't even know a building that big. Electric alone might eat up that $1,500. And then what? Then what are we going to do? And I remember just being so shocked at that. And I said, look, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I mean, have you ever heard that expression? You know what that is? Like, look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm just sitting here talking, from a standpoint that everybody knows that. The idea of that is that if somebody gifts you a horse, you don't look in its mouth to see if it's healthy, because you can see if a horse is healthy by his teeth. And so you don't like lift up his lips and check the teeth of the horse that's being gifted to you to say whether or not you want that. You don't look a gift horse in the mouth. That's what I felt like we were talking about with our church. Here we are gifted this building, and I remember saying, look, if it comes down to it and we can't afford the utility bills, then I guess we'll just meet when it's sunny, and it had windows in the sanctuary, so we'll just meet when it's sunny and don't let anybody flush the toilets. I don't know what else we could say about the matter other than it feels foolish not to take a step of faith when God seems to be opening up a door. And that's what you see out of Jonathan here. Jonathan says, hey, we're standing here. They've arrayed themselves in battle against us. Let's go up and show ourselves. And here's what he does. He gives himself, it might seem like he put out a test, or he put, does he not trust what he's originally said? But I don't think that that's what happened. He puts out kind of a fleece, if you will. He puts out a way. I want you to check it out this way. It's like a means of instead of doubt. It's not like Jonathan's doubting, but it's a means of determining. Not just determination in like, oh, he's determined to do it, but like discernment. Is this what God wants us to do? So here's what he suggests. He says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to show ourselves to them. We're going to put ourselves in a position that they can see us. And if they say to us, you wait there, we're going to come down to you, and they start coming our way, we're going to know that's a problem. The Lord didn't want us to do this, and we're going to take off and go back in hiding. But if they say to us, come up here, we're going to go right. And I love that too. It's not just like we're going to wait here, and if they come to us, he actually flips it around and says, if they say come up here, then we're going to go up there. This is Jonathan and his armor bearer. Really only one, it's two guys and one sword. You ever seen the moving company, Two Guys in a Truck? I mean, that's what we have here. We got two guys and a sword are going to go out to this battle. But that's what they do. They head out to the battle, and they show themselves to the Philistine garrison, and the garrison says, hey, come up here. And they know this is what they're supposed to be doing. Now let's pick up in verse 11, and let's read what happens next out of start in 1 Samuel chapter 14, and then in verse 11. So both of them showed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines, and the Philistines said, look, the Hebrews are coming out of the holes where they have hidden. And then the men of the garrison called to Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, come up to us and we will show you something. Jonathan said to his armor bearer, come up with me, for the Lord has delivered us into the hand of, or has delivered them into the hand of Israel. And Jonathan climbed up on his hands and knees with his armor bearer after him, and they fell before Jonathan. And he came after him, and as he came after him, his armor bearer killed them. That first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor bearer made was about 20 men within about half an acre of land. And there was a trembling in the camp, in the field, and among the people. The garrison and the raiders also trembled, and the earth quaked, and so it was a very great trembling. So we see Jonathan made his way up the rock, showed himself to the Philistine garrison. And what did they do? They said, come up here. And he said, come on with me. Jonathan says to his armor bearer, come on with me, because the Lord has delivered them into our hand. Can I just pause for a moment there and say something about that? If you're going to ask the Lord for a sign, if you're going to ask the Lord to show something to you, it would be wisdom to trust the thing that he has showed you. Years ago, I remember a church had bought a piece of ground. They'd bought a piece of land. They were going to move their church building to that land and build on that land. And I know this firsthand. It doesn't matter where you pick. It doesn't matter where you look to build. It doesn't matter what. It comes with nerves. And after a short amount of time, the church began to get nervous about this land. Now, I remember coming together as a church, praying and fasting for this land. Lord, is this what you want us to do? Open the doors and make it possible for us to buy this land. And then the doors were open and it was made possible. We had prayed and we had fasted, but then the church got nervous and the church never moved out to that land. And I remember years ago years later, but years ago for me now, but years later, as that same church said, well, we think we need to sell this land. And so, that alone was bothersome. Like, why are we trying to sell the land that we had prayed for and fasted for? Why would we sell that? Like, it's not harming anything for us to have it. Let's move forward. We've already paid off most of it. Like, let's move forward and build on that land. But instead, the church decided, well, here's what we're going to do. We'll see if we can sell it. If we sell it, then we'll know. And if we can't, then we won't. But guess what happened? They put it up for a little bit above what they had purchased it for. They were pretty much going to break even. But nope, nothing came through. Nobody wanted to buy. Realtor said, well, it's because your price is too high. You need to lower that price. Now, we had bought it for a certain price, but we lowered the price. Still didn't move. You know what the realtor came back and said? You're still too high. Lower it again. Now, how much of a sign? Didn't you say if we sell it, it must be what the Lord wanted? But they lowered the price and lowered the price and lowered the price and lowered the price until they finally sold the land at a loss. Why would they have to sell the land at a loss? Well, because they didn't trust. You have to put a trust in the Lord to say, I've asked you this. We started out by asking, should we even buy it to begin with? And then after we've bought it, then what do we do after that? We have to trust and build on that land. But then when they put out another question and said, well, if we should sell it, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put it up for sale. And if it sells, then we're going to know, like, that's what it was supposed to do. That's we were supposed to sell it. But it didn't sell. So shouldn't you at that point pause and say, wait, I've asked the Lord and this is the answer that he's given me, and then trust that answer? That's what Jonathan did. Jonathan trusted the answer that God gave him. He said, if we show ourselves and they say, come up here, then that's the sign the Lord's going to deliver them to us. They're in about a half acre of land, and they are in a fight with 20 men. 20 men fall to this one guy. This one guy, Jonathan, ends up killing. He defeats the Philistine garrison of 20 men to his 1 man, 1 to 20. This is literally fulfillment of God's word. Here are all of these Philistine soldiers. They all know how to fight. They all know how to wield a sword. They're all probably trained in what they're doing in some degree, and yet Jonathan was able to defeat them. Why? Because Jonathan was trained better. Did Jonathan know Krav Maga, or did he know how to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? No, it had nothing to do with his skills. It had nothing to do with his abilities. Jonathan's abilities, check this out, it had everything to do with his faith. He trusted in the one who could do it for him. And so he didn't let the numbers of the Philistines did not intimidate him, because that's not the type of battle it was. If the battle was, can Jonathan defeat 20 people, Jonathan's going to lose. If that's all it is Jonathan's fighting 20 people, Jonathan's going to find that Jonathan loses. But Jonathan wasn't depending on himself. He was depending on the Lord. And what do you see is the result of that? What is the result of Jonathan going up and defeating these 20 men? It causes a great trembling among the Philistines. The Philistines certainly have heard the stories of what has happened with the Israelite people in years prior. in years past. Now, they right now are fighting that. And they're like, well, maybe that's ancient history or whatever. I mean, remember, these are the same Philistines that had stolen the Ark of the Covenant for a little while and then passed it around because they were, plagued by its presence with them. And yet what did they do? They still kept trying to pass it. They didn't want to give it back to Israel until they finally ended up having to give it back to Israel. So the Philistines certainly have heard of the power of God. They're just denying that power. But now that Jonathan has stepped up and done what the Lord had told him to do and what the Lord had given him a sign that he should do, Jonathan defeats the 20 Philistines, and now all of a sudden the entire Philistine army is trembling. It's like such a great trembling. It's like the earth is shaking. I mean, they are fearful. What can even a great army do against our God? And then that brings us back to what Christ has said, that upon this rock he would build his church, himself, and the gates of hell cannot prevail against it. What's the thing that's holding you back, that's causing you to think that you shouldn't do the thing that God's told you to do, or that you can't do the thing that you've been feeling God call you to do? What's the reason that you think you can't do that? Is God not big enough to do that through you? Is God not big enough to do the work that he's called you to do, to see it through to the end? Oh, see, friend, the question is not, can you do that work? The question is, can God do it through you? And the answer is always, yes, God can do, whether by many or by few, God can do whatever he wants to do. All right, I've got one more for you. Let's look a little further now. We're picking up in verse 16, and we'll read through verse 23. And there was trembling in the camp, in the field, and among all the people. And the garrison and the raiders also trembled, and the earth quaked, so that it was a very great trembling. And now the watchmen of Saul and Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and there was a multitude melting away. And they went here and there. And then Saul said to the people who were with him, Now call the roll and see who has gone from us. And when they had called the roll, surprisingly, Jonathan and his armor-bearer were not there. And Saul said to Ahijah, Bring the ark of God here. For at that time the ark of God was with the children of Israel. And now it happened while Saul talked to the priest that the noise which was in the camp of the Philistines continued to increase. So Saul said to the priest, Withdraw your hand. And then Saul and all the people who were with him assembled, and they went to the battle, and indeed every man's sword was against his neighbor, and there was a very great confusion. Moreover, the Hebrews who were with the Philistines before that time, who went up with them into the camp from the surrounding country, they also joined the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. Likewise, all the men of Israel who had hidden in the mountains of Ephraim, when they heard of that the Philistines fled, they also followed after them in the battle. And so the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle shifted to Beth Aven. Ooh. Do you see what just happened? Jonathan was obedient. He defeats the garrison 20-1. And what happens? Saul calls the roll. He hears that they look out and they see the Philistines. Remember, they're innumerable, but they see the Philistines. They're going this way and that. They're scattering. They're running off. They're like literally, imagine like you just see this wave of people like exiting. They're exiting and exiting and exiting. It's getting bigger and more spread out. And Saul goes, what is happening? What is going on? Do the roll call. And so they roll call. Jonathan and the armor bearer are missing. Now Saul's putting 2 and 2 together here, because this whole thing started because Jonathan went out and fought against a Philistine garrison, attacked a Philistine garrison. And so now what happens? Now Saul says, bring the ark of the Lord here. They're going to go and jump in the battle. And when he goes to jump in the battle, did you see what happened? His men followed him. Not only did his men remember in the last episode for us, but in the last chapter, do you remember what happened as Saul was nervous to go into the battle because they hadn't made the sacrifice yet, and because his people were dwindling, they were fearful and they were scared because they didn't have enough weaponry. But now look, they've heard Jonathan's won a battle against the garrisons 20-1. Jonathan won that 20-1 fight. Now the Philistines are scattering. They're fighting amongst each other. They're confused. And there's this interesting thing that happens. Apparently there were Hebrews, Israelites, who had joined with the Philistines and were going to fight against Israel, I guess thinking that they were going to win because they were among the Philistines who were greater in number. So they had just decided if you can't beat them, join them, or at least that's what it seems like. And so notice they came back to Israel. They came and joined the Israelite side. and submitted themselves back before Israel and said, oh no, we want to be on this side. They're all running off confused. Not only that, but the people who were hiding in the caves, in the dens, and in the bushes, they all started coming out. Those who were in hiding came out of hiding and joined the battle. And God gave them the victory that day. And the battle that was Israel hiding and the Philistines encamped around them, now the battle has shifted and now Israel is taking the charge. Do you see what happened? Jonathan's obedience stirred up the faith of all of those other people. And now it stirred them to follow in the same type of obedience. Friends, this is what I would encourage you today, that if you will be obedient to what God is calling you to do, you can and will affect the hearts and minds of other believers around you. I'll give you one example of that in my own life right now. We've started a school at our church. Many of you who follow along with my story, you know that we've started this school. And there's an end goal to our school, and it is not solely that our school would be this private school of a church here in Kentucky. That's not the goal. I'm not saying that's a bad goal to have if somebody had that goal, but our end goal is not just that we would have a private school at our church. No, we've opened up a school with a very unique model where we're not charging tuition because we want to make this available, bringing Christ into education, make that available to as many as we can get the message of Christ to. We see it as a mission, but even more, we want other churches to do the same. Here's why. There's 56 million American students going to public schools, I would say government schools, every single day. 56 million. That's crazy. How could we, with one private school, reach 56 million? Well, I don't believe that's not physically attainable. That's not an attainable goal. It wouldn't make logical sense how that could happen. But if churches around America would see that we successfully opened a tuition-free school, invited people in, that we were able to not only start the school, but sustain the school and then begin a foundation to help other churches do the same. Could you imagine if there was a run of churches across America following in obedience to the Lord's call and opening schools? What would happen to our 56 million American students who now have an alternative besides government schools that they could go and hear the word of the Lord in their daily education, to hear the gospel, the good news of Jesus in their daily education? Do you see one person's obedience can stir the obedience in others? And I would encourage you that you can do the same. You might think that feels like too big of a task. Yeah, if you say, Justin, did you just say that you're hoping to stir up churches across America? Yes. Let me make that very clear. That's a resounding yes. But if that task sounds too big to you and you say, well, I don't know that I'm affecting anybody doing what I'm doing, what about your home? What about your neighbors? What about your friend group? What about your children? What about your parents? Hey, what about the people that are in your life? Did you see me get stuck there? I'm like friends, parents, neighbors, siblings, you name it. Okay, you get what I'm saying. Who are the people in your life that you do have an effect on? Who are the people that know you, that if they saw you change, if they saw you doing something, if they saw you being obedient, who are the people in your life that would take notice of that? You never know what you might stir inside of them. All right, I hope you've enjoyed today's video of 1 Samuel chapter 14, verses 1 to 23, and tomorrow we'll pick up in verse 24. So I hope that you'll come back and join me for that. See you then.